Commander Tejo stood before the massive window of Grimhold Station, watching the stars flicker in the distance. His reflection stared back at him, showing the scars that covered his blue-scaled face. Each mark told a story of survival, of battles. Fought on worlds that would kill most creatures in minutes. The Vorthok had once ruled 12 star systems.
Ow.
Now they had only this one fortress world, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Tejo remembered when their empire stretched from the ice fields of Korath to the burning deserts of Vex Prime. Those worlds were ash now, consumed by the machines that hunted them. "Commander!" a voice called behind him. Ho turned to see Lieutenant Bora approaching. Her young face showed the same determination that all Vorthok carried, even in these dark times. "The scouts have returned with their report." Tejo nodded.
Tell me.
Bora pulled out a data tablet, her clawed fingers. Moving across the screen, the Devourer fleet is 3 days away. Our sensors count at least 500 ships, maybe more. They're moving in perfect formation, just like always. The words hit Tejo like a physical blow, but he kept his expression steady. 500 ships. His people had maybe 50 vessels that could still fight, and most of those were damaged. From their last retreat, "How long until they reach our outer defenses?" he asked. 60 hours, sir. Maybe less if they increase speed." Tejo walked to the tactical display that dominated the center of the command room. The holographic image showed Grimhold Station floating in space, surrounded by defensive platforms and weapon arrays. It looked impressive, but Tejo knew the truth. They could hold the Devourers for days, maybe a week. But eventually the machines would break through. Sir Bora said quietly, "The civilians are asking questions. They want to know if we're going to evacuate." "Evacuate to where?" Tejo replied. "This is the last safe place in the galaxy. Behind us is only empty space and dead worlds." Bora looked down at her tablet. "The engineering teams have been working on the defense grid. They say they can boost power by maybe 10%. It's not much, but ... double quotes, but it might buy us another day," Tejo finished. "Tell them to do it." The Vorthok had survived impossible things. Tejo remembered the ice world of Korath, where the temperature dropped so low that metal became brittle as glass. His people had lived there for generations, building cities under the frozen ground. They had survived the acid storms of Melton 7, where the rain could dissolve armor in seconds. They had even lived on gravity's end, where the pull was so strong that every step felt like carrying a mountain. But the Devourers were different. They weren't weather or terrain or deadly creatures. They were machines with one purpose: to consume all life in the galaxy. They had started their war of extinction 1,000 years ago, moving from system to system like a plague of metal and death. The worst part was how efficient they were. The Devourers didn't just destroy planets. They learned from each battle, adapting their tactics and weapons to counter whatever defense they faced. Every victory made them stronger. Every defeat taught them something new. "Commander," another voice interrupted his thoughts. Engineer Wubin approached with a concerned expression. "We have a problem with the main shield generator, the power. Coupling is failing faster than we expected." Tejo closed his eyes for a moment. More bad news. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 2 days before it fails completely. We can try to repair it, but we don't have the right parts. Everything we need was manufactured on the industrial worlds, and those are all gone now. 2 days the Devourers would arrive in 3. That left them with only the secondary shields, which were designed to protect against asteroids and solar radiation, not planet-killing weapons. "Do what you can," Tejo said. "Use whatever parts you need from the civilian sections. Strip everything that isn't essential." Wubin nodded and hurried away. Tejo turned back to the tactical display, studying the defensive positions around. Grimhold. The fortress world had been chosen carefully. It sat in the middle of an asteroid field that would slow down approaching ships. The space around it was filled with mines and automated weapon platforms. If they were going to make a last stand anywhere, this was the place. But even as he looked at their defenses, Tejo knew they weren't enough. Devourers had broken through stronger positions. It conquered worlds with better weapons. And more soldiers. What made him think Grimhold would be any different? Sir Bora spoke again, her voice uncertain. There's something else. Long-range sensors picked up a strange reading from the outer system. Teho looked at her. Strange how? It's a ship, but not like anything in our databases. It's small. Maybe a quarter the size of our scouts. The hull looks like it's held together with metal patches and hope. But here's the weird part. It's broadcasting on frequencies we haven't used in centuries. Pirates? Teho asked. Scavengers looking for salvage. I don't think so, sir. The broadcast is using old diplomatic codes. Really old, like from before. The Devourer War started. Teho frowned. Before the war, the galaxy had been full of different species, all trading and communicating with each other. Most of those civilizations were extinct now, consumed by the machines or destroyed in the chaos that followed. Who could still be using those ancient codes? What does the message say? Bora checked her tablet again. It's requesting permission to dock. They identify themselves as the crew of a vessel called Soul's Pride. They claim to be human. The word hit Teho like lightning. Human. He had heard that name before in old records and historical texts. Humans had been one of the first species to face the Devourers centuries ago. Their home world had been one of the first to fall. Everyone knew the story. Earth had been completely destroyed, its population wiped out in a matter of days. That's impossible, Teho said. Humans have been extinct for over 300 years. That's what I thought too, sir. But the ship is definitely there, and it's heading straight for us. They'll reach the station in about 6 hours. Teho stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. A human ship, arriving just days before the final battle. It could be a trap, some kind of devourer trick. The machines were clever enough to fake a distress signal if it served their purpose. But what if it wasn't a trap? What if somehow, impossibly, there were still humans alive out there, sir? Bora was waiting for orders. Teho made his decision. Allow them to dock, but keep security teams ready. If this is some kind of devourer deception, I want to know immediately. Yes, sir. As Bora hurried away to make the arrangements, Teho remained at the window, looking out at the stars. In 3 days, the Devourer fleet would arrive, and the last chapter of galactic civilization would probably end. The Vorthok had survived the harshest worlds in the galaxy, but they had never faced anything like this. Maybe, just maybe, these mysterious humans would have answers. Maybe they would just be 3 more souls to add to the count of the dead. Either way, Teho would find out soon enough. The docking bay fell silent as the human ship settled onto the landing platform with a loud clank. Teho watched from the observation deck above, flanked by Lieutenant Bora and a full security team. The vessel looked even worse up close than did it had on the sensors. The hull was covered in patches of different metals, welded together in patterns that hurt to look at. Scorch marks covered most of the surface, and several sections looked like they had been rebuilt multiple times. That thing actually flies, Bora whispered. Apparently, Teho replied, though I'm not sure how. The ship's door opened with a grinding sound of protesting metal. Steam hissed out from the interior, carrying strange smells that made the Vorthok guards step back. Then, 3 figures emerged from the smoke. The first was clearly the leader. He walked with the steady confidence of someone used to command. Despite wearing clothes that looked like they had been stitched together from salvaged materials, his dark hair was streaked with gray, and his face showed the kind of weathering that came from years of hard living. Behind him came a woman with tools hanging from her, belt and oil stains on her hands. Her eyes moved constantly, studying everything. Around her, with the focused attention of an engineer, the third human was smaller, carrying what looked like a medical bag made from animal hide. I am Captain Dongman of the Soul's Pride, the leader called out, his voice echoing in the docking bay. We request permission to speak with your commander. Teho activated the comm system. I am Commander Teho. You claim to be human, but humans have been extinct for centuries. Explain yourselves. Captain Dongman looked up at the observation window and smiled. It was not the smile of someone trying to deceive. It was the smile of someone who had heard this question many times before. We get that a lot, he said. May we come up? It's a long story and we don't have much time. 10 minutes later, the three humans sat across from Taeho in the station's main conference room. Close, they looked even more worn than their ship. Their clothes were patched and repatched. Their equipment was clearly handmade. But their eyes held something that impressed Taeho despite himself. The look of people who had survived impossible things. Earth fell 312 years ago, Captain Dongmin began. But not all humans were on Earth when it happened. The Soul's Pride was a colony ship, one of dozens that launched in the final years before the Devourers arrived. We were supposed to reach a nice, safe world called New Garden. Instead, we ended up somewhere else entirely. The engineer, who had introduced herself as Sujin, leaned forward. Our navigation systems failed during the jump. Came out of hyperspace near a planet that wasn't on any of our charts. When we tried to leave, the ship broke down. Really broke down. We had no choice but to land. What kind of world? Bora asked. Sujin and Dongmin exchanged glances. The medic Hyung-ho spoke for the first time. The kind of world that makes you question whether the universe has a sense of humor. The gravity was twice what humans are designed for, Dongmin continued. The atmosphere was toxic. The weather included acid storms that could strip flesh from bone. The local wildlife consisted mostly of things that wanted to eat us, and they were very good at their job. Taeho frowned. The Vorthok had lived on. Harsh worlds, but what the humans described sounded worse than most. How did you survive? Badly at first, Sujin said with a laugh. We lost half the crew in the first year, but humans are stubborn. We learn fast when we have to. She pulled out a small device from her tool belt. It looked like it had been built from spare parts and held together with wire. This is an air scrubber. It turns the toxic atmosphere into something we can breathe. I built it from pieces of our broken life support system and some minerals we found in the caves. Wubin, who had joined them in the conference room, examined the device with interest. The design is crude, but the principle is sound. How efficient is it? Efficient enough to keep 300 people alive for 15 years, Sujin replied. 300 people. Taeho realized these weren't just survivors. They were an entire community that had thrived on a world that sounded worse than most Vorthok death worlds. What about food? Bora asked. Kyung-ho opened his medical bag and pulled out what looked like dried plant matter. Most of the native plants were poisonous, but I figured out how to process them to remove the toxins. We also learned to hunt the local animals, once we figured out which ones wouldn't kill us, just by touching them. You hunted animals that were designed to hunt you? Wubin asked. Everything on that world was designed to hunt us, Dongmin said. The plants, the animals, even the weather. But we had something they didn't expect, which was we were more stubborn than they were dangerous. Taeho studied the three humans. Their story sounded impossible, but he had seen impossible things before. The Vorthok themselves had survived situations that should have killed them. But something about these humans was different. They didn't talk about their survival like it was a great achievement. They talked about it like it was just another day at work. Why are you here? He asked. Why now? We got your distress signal, Sujin said. Our ship's sensors aren't much, but they work well enough. We could see the Devourer fleet moving this way. And you came to help? Bora sounded skeptical. 3 people in a ship that barely flies against 500 Devourer vessels? Why not? Dongmin shrugged. We've faced worse odds. The casual way he said it made Taeho's skin crawl. These humans talked about impossible odds like other people talked about the weather. What exactly do you think you can do against the Devourers? Wubin asked. Sujin grinned and pulled out another device. This one looked like a cube made of scrap metal with wires sticking out of it. Well, first we should probably fix your shield generator. I notice it's running at about 60% efficiency. Wubin stared at her. How could you possibly know that? I can hear it from here. The power coupling is oscillating wrong. Probably because you're using the wrong crystal matrix in the secondary array. The crystal matrix is standard Vorthok technology. It's been tested for centuries. Sure, but it's designed for steady power loads. When you boost the output for combat, it starts to resonate at the wrong frequency. Simple fix, really. Wubin looked at Taeho with confusion. The commander shared his bewilderment. These humans had been on the station for less than an hour, and they were already diagnosing problems with their most advanced technology. Even if you could improve our shields, Tejo said, it wouldn't matter. The Devourers will adapt to whatever we throw at them. They always do. That's their weakness, Kung-Ho said quietly. What do you mean? They adapt to what they expect. But what if you do something they can't expect? Something that doesn't make sense? Dongmin stood up and walked to the window that showed the approaching space where the Devourer fleet would soon appear. Commander, your people are survivors. We respect that. But you survive by being tougher than whatever tries to kill you. Turned back to face the room, humans survive differently. We survive by being stranger than whatever tries to kill us. Tejo felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about the way Dongmin said it that suggested depths of meaning he couldn't quite grasp. What are you proposing? He asked. Sujin's grin got wider. Let us show you some tricks we learned on that death world. Things that don't make sense to anyone except humans. And if they don't work, then we all die, Dongmin said cheerfully. But at least we'll die doing something interesting. Bora leaned over to Tejo and whispered, Sir, these humans are completely insane. Tejo looked at the three humans, sitting calmly in their patched clothes with their impossible devices and their casual attitude towards certain death. He thought about the approaching Devourer fleet and the failing shield generator and the fact that his people had nowhere left to run. To be insane is exactly what we need, he said. The war room buzzed with tension as Tejo gathered his senior officers around the tactical table. The holographic display showed the Devourer fleet moving steadily toward Grimhold, now less than 2 days away. Beside the Vorthok commanders stood the three humans, looking completely out of place in their patched clothing. Show us what you have in mind, Tejo said to Captain Dong-Min. Dong-Min stepped forward and did something that made every Vorthok in the room freeze. He reached out and touched the tactical display with his bare hand. The hologram flickered and distorted around his fingers. Sir, Bora whispered urgently, those displays are calibrated to the molecular level. Physical contact can throw off all the readings. It's fine, Sujin said cheerfully. We need to see the real positions anyway, not the computer's guess. Wubin looked horrified. The computer's calculations are based on advanced mathematics and decades of tactical experience. Sure, Dongmin said, moving ships around with his fingers like toys. But computers think in straight lines. Enemies don't. He arranged the display to show a different view of the approaching battle, instead of the standard defensive formation. He scattered the Vorthok ships in what looked like complete chaos. This is your plan? Wubin asked, his voice rising. Random placement of our forces. That's not tactics. That's suicide. Not random, Sujin corrected. Unpredictable. It's a difference. She pulled out her scrap metal device and activated it. Immediately, the ship positions on the display vanished. The tactical computer began displaying error messages as it lost track of every vessel in the simulation. What did you just do? Tejo demanded. Made you invisible, Sujin said simply. This little box sends out interference that confuses sensors. The Devourers won't be able to target what they can't see. Bora shook her head. Impossible. Devourer sensors can detect a single molecule of exhaust from light years away. No stealth technology in the galaxy can hide from them. You're right, Kung-Ho said quietly. This isn't stealth technology. Then what is it? Sujin grinned. Noise. Lots and lots of noise. She adjusted her device, and suddenly the display filled with thousands of false readings. Ships appeared everywhere, moving in impossible patterns, flickering in and out of existence. The Devourers expect to see nothing or see the truth. She explained. They don't know how to handle seeing everything at once. Your targeting computers will crash trying to process all this fake data. Wubin stared at the chaos on the screen. Even if that works, how do our own ships know where to go if they can't see each other? Dongmin pulled out what looked like a child's toy, a small whistle carved from bone. Simple communication.
Oh.
No electronics to jam, no signals to trace. You want to coordinate a space battle with whistles? Bora's voice cracked with disbelief. Coordinated hunts against pack predators the size of buildings with whistles, Dongmin replied. Space is just a bigger hunting ground. Taeho studied the display, trying to understand what he was seeing. The human plan looked like complete madness. Ships scattered randomly, communication by primitive signals, hiding behind a wall of fake sensor readings. Everything about it violated centuries of military doctrine. Even if this confusion tactic works, he said slowly, what then? The Devourers will adapt. They always do. What we're counting on, Kyung-ho said. The medic approached the tactical display and began pointing to specific areas. Adaptation takes time, even for machines. During that time, they're vulnerable. Vulnerable to what? Woo-bin asked. Su-Jin reached into her tool bag and pulled out a small cylinder that looked like it had been made from kitchen supplies. To this, she set the cylinder on the table. It sat there looking completely harmless. What is it? Taeho asked. Virus, Su-Jin said casually. Computer virus. You plant these on Devourer ships, and they spread through the fleet's network. Bora leaned away from the cylinder as if it might explode. You built computer viruses from spare parts? Not exactly. Built? Kyung-ho corrected. More like evolved. We spent 15 years fighting technology that was smarter than us. You learn to make technology that's dumber, but more persistent. Woo-bin picked up the cylinder carefully. What does it do to their systems? Makes them stupid, Dongmin said. Really, really stupid. How stupid?
Ow.
Su-Jin's grin became almost predatory. Remember how I said the Devourers adapt to whatever they face? This virus makes them adapt to things that aren't there. They'll start defending against attacks that never happen, deploying countermeasures for weapons that don't exist. Eventually, Kyung-ho added, they'll adapt themselves into complete uselessness. The room fell silent as the Vorthok officers absorbed this information. Taeho looked at each of his commanders, seeing the same mixture of disbelief and desperate hope in their eyes. You want to test this? He asked finally. Already did, Su-Jin said. She pointed to a section of the tactical display. Your mining station in Sector 7 has been running my interference system for the last hour. Check your sensors. Woo-bin quickly activated the station's sensor array. The readings showed nothing in Sector 7. No mining station, no ore. Haulers, no automated equipment, just empty space. The station is still there, Su-Jin continued. Still working. Your sensors just can't see it anymore. Bora checked the mining station's status reports. Everything was normal. Production was continuing on schedule. But according to every sensor on Grimhold, Sector 7 was completely empty. This is incredible, Woo-bin breathed. We can hide. Our entire defensive fleet like this. It gets better, Dongmin said. He activated his bone whistle and blew a simple pattern of notes. Immediately, the sensor readings in Sector 7 changed. The mining station appeared, vanished, then appeared in a completely different location. The interference system responds. 2 acoustic signals, Su-Jin explained. We can make our ships appear anywhere we want, or make them disappear completely. The Devourers will be shooting at ghosts while our real forces attack from their blind spots. Taeho felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Excitement. Not just hope, but genuine anticipation for a battle. The human plan was insane, but it was the kind of insanity that might actually work. What do you need from us? He asked. Time to modify your ships, Su-Jin said. And volunteers who aren't afraid to try something new? How many volunteers? Dongmin looked around the room at the assembled Vorthok officers. How many of you are tired of fighting the Devourers the same way everyone else has tried? Every hand in the room went up. That should be enough, he said, over the next several hours. Su-Jin worked with Vorthok engineers to install her interference devices on a dozen fighter ships. The modifications looked like random junk bolted to the hull, but when activated, they made each ship vanish from sensors completely. Kyung-ho demonstrated his medical techniques on volunteers from the crew. When Commander Yuna brought him a soldier with severe burns from a reactor accident, Kyung-ho treated the wounds with a paste made from plants he had grown in the ship's cargo hold. Within hours, the burns were healing faster than advanced Vorthok. Medical technology could manage. How is this possible? Nunn asked, studying the healing tissue. Your medicine fights the injury, Kyunho explained. Mine convinces the body that being injured is inconvenient. That doesn't make sense. No, Kunho agreed. But it works. As the modifications continued, Wubin worked with Dongmin to coordinate the attack plan. The Vorthok's strategic genius found himself constantly frustrated by the human captains. Approach to warfare? You don't have backup plans, Wubin complained. What if the Devourers counter your first move? Then we try something else, Dongman said.
What?
Something else. You need contingencies, alternative strategies, fallback positions. Why? The simple question stopped Wubin cold, because that's how military planning works. Maybe that's why everyone who fights the Devourers loses, Dongmin suggested. They plan for what makes sense. Dude, the Devourers are very good at making sense. Wubin stared at him. So you plan for what doesn't make sense? We don't plan at all, Dongmin said cheerfully. We just keep trying new things until something works. As the humans prepared their impossible battle plan, Taeho found himself watching them with a mixture of admiration and terror. These creatures had survived 15 years on a world that sounded worse than any Vorthok death world, and they had done it by abandoning everything that made sense. The Devourers were less than a day away now. Soon they would find out if human madness was stronger than machine logic. Taeho had a feeling it was going to be the strangest battle in galactic history. The first wave of modified Vorthok fighters launched from Grimhold Station just as the Devourer fleet reached the outer system. Taeho watched from the command center as 12 ships vanished from his sensors the moment Sujin's interference devices activated. In the tactical display, they simply stopped existing. Strike Team Alpha is away, Bora reported from her fighter cockpit, her voice crackling through the bone whistle communication system. I can't see anyone else, but I can hear the whistle signals. Lieutenant Bora had volunteered to lead the first team paired with Captain Dongmin as her human advisor. The idea of taking tactical advice from someone sitting in her back seat had seemed insane 12 hours ago. Now it felt like their only hope. Remember, Dongmin's voice came through? Don't fly like you're trying to avoid being shot. Fly like you're trying to confuse them. What's the difference? Bora asked, steering her fighter through the asteroid field that surrounded Grimhold. When you avoid being shot, you act predictable. When you confuse them, you act like me, Dora. Wasn't sure that was reassuring. The Devourer fleet moved through space in perfect formation. Their black ships arranged in geometric patterns that spoke of machine precision. Each vessel was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. They had faced this enemy before, and the Vorthok knew exactly how hopeless their situation was. But as the strike teams approached, something strange happened. The Devourer sensors began showing impossible readings. Ships appeared and disappeared randomly. False targets multiplied across their displays. Perfect formation started to waver as individual ships tried to target enemies that weren't there. It's working, Wubin breathed from the command center. Their targeting systems are going crazy. On her fighter, Bora watched the massive Devourer ships begin firing at empty space. Beams of energy that could vaporize mountains lanced out toward phantom targets, missing her invisible fighter by mere kilometers. Now what? She asked Dongmin. Now we get creative. See that big ship in the center? The one that looks like a metal cathedral? Bor looked at the command vessel, Isli, 10 times larger than anything else in the fleet. What about it? Fly straight at it. That's suicide. Trust me. Against every instinct she possessed, Bora aimed her fighter directly at the massive command ship. She expected to be vaporized instantly, but the Devourer weapons continued firing at ghost targets. Their sensors showed thousands of ships attacking from every direction. They couldn't lock onto one small fighter flying straight at them. This is insane, Bora muttered. Now you're getting it, Dongmin said cheerfully as they approached the command ship. Bora saw other strike teams emerging from the chaos. Sujin's interference had worked perfectly. The Devourers were shooting at shadows while real fighters slipped through their defenses like smoke. Team Beta in position, came Yuna's voice through the whistle come. She was flying with engineer Sujin, who had spent the journey modifying their weapon systems with spare parts and creative thinking. Team Gamma ready, reported Wubin, paired with Madeka Kyungho. The strategic genius had been skeptical about human tactics until he saw them in action. All teams, plant your presence and get out, Dongmin ordered. Bora's fighter docked with the command ship's maintenance port. The Devourer automated systems didn't even notice them. According to their sensors, nothing was there. Dongmin quickly attached one of Sujin's virus cylinders to the ship's data network. Package delivered, Bora reported. What now? See what happens when machines try to think like humans. Across the fleet, other teams were planting their virus devices on key ships. The cylinders looked harmless, but each one contained code that had been designed on a world where survival meant being more stubborn than logic. As the strike teams retreated, the first effects of the virus became visible. The Devourer command, ships suddenly stopped firing and began broadcasting nonsense data to the rest of the fleet. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation started executing random maneuvers. It's spreading, Sujin reported from her fighter. The virus is jumping from ship to ship through their communication network. Taeho watched in amazement as the Devourer fleet began to fall apart. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems received conflicting orders. Weapons fired at friendly vessels as targeting computers identified their own fleet as enemies. How is this possible? He asked. The virus doesn't just corrupt their data, Kyungho explained over the comm. It makes them paranoid. Every ship starts seeing threats in every other ship. They're attacking each other because they think everyone else has been compromised. But even as the human plan succeeded beyond their wildest hopes, problems began to emerge. The strain of coordinating the cyber attack was taking a terrible toll on the human crew. Dongmin, Bora called out. You okay back there? She heard labored breathing through the comm. The mental link required to guide the virus spread is challenging for human physiology. What does that mean? It means we're slowly killing ourselves to make this work, Sujin said bluntly from her fighter. Human brains aren't designed to interface directly with computer networks. Kyungho's voice was getting weaker. The virus needs constant guidance to stay effective. If we stop directing it, the Devourers will eventually purge it from their systems. Bora felt her blood freeze. How long can you keep it up? Long enough, Dongmin said, though his voice was strained. The virus is self-replicating now. Learning to think like us. On the tactical display, the Devourer fleet continued its self-destruction. Ships that had survived the destruction of entire star systems were tearing each other apart based on false information. Their greatest strength, the perfect communication between all vessels, had become their fatal weakness. My God, Wubin, whispered, you're not just defeating this fleet. You're destroying their entire command structure. That was the idea, Sujin said weakly. The virus will spread to every Devourer network they've ever built, every ship, every base, every communication relay. Taeho realized the full scope of what was happening. The humans hadn't just found a way to win this battle. They had found a way to end the war. But at what cost? He asked. Dongmin's laughter came through the comm, but it sounded different now, distant. Everything worthwhile costs something. We learned that on the Death World. As the last Devourer ships drifted powerless in space, their crews either dead or fleeing in escape pods. Bora guided her fighter back toward Grimholt Station. Behind her, Captain Dongmin had fallen unconscious from the strain of directing the virus. The galaxy was free from the Devourers, but the price of that freedom was becoming clear. The humans had saved everyone by sacrificing themselves. Bora found herself crying as she flew toward home, though she wasn't sure if it was from joy or sorrow. The medical bay of Grimholt Station buzzed with activity as King Ho worked frantically to keep his fellow humans alive. Captain Dongmin lay unconscious on one bed, his brain still connected to the virus network through devices that Sujin had. Rigged from medical equipment, Sujin herself was barely conscious, her hands still moving across control panels even as her body shut down from exhaustion. What's happening to them? Yuna asked, watching the human medic inject himself with something that looked like liquid metal. The virus needs guidance, Kyunho explained, his voice weak but determined. It's spreading through every devourer network in the galaxy. But it has to learn how to think like a human for each new system it encounters. We're teaching it, but the mental strain is killing us. Bora stood beside Dongmin's bed watching. The readings on the medical displays. Human captain's brain activity was off the charts, far beyond what should be survivable. Can't you just stop? She asked. The devourer fleet here is defeated. This fleet was just the beginning, Sujin whispered from her bed. The virus has found their home networks. All of them. Every devourer base, every ship, every command center they've built over 1,000 years. Uben leaned over the tactical display that had been moved into the medical bay. Long-range sensors are picking up massive system failures across 12 star systems. The devourer civilization is collapsing. How is that possible? Taeho asked. Kung-ho managed a weak smile. We told you. The virus makes them paranoid. Every devourer base now thinks every other base has been compromised. They're attacking each other, destroying their own infrastructure to prevent the spread of what they think is an invasion. But it's not an invasion, Bora said. It's just code. To them, there's no difference, Sujin said. Devourers don't understand the concept of false information. They process data as absolute truth. When that data says their allies are enemies, they believe it completely. On the tactical display, reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. Devourer forces that had occupied worlds for centuries were abandoning their positions. Ships that had terrorized entire star systems were turning their weapons on each other. Species that had been hiding for generations are emerging, Wubin reported. The Kalani just reclaimed their homeworld. The Threks have announced their rebuilding. Their fleet, it's like the entire galaxy is waking up. But the celebration was muted by the condition of the humans. They were dying to achieve this victory, burning out their minds to guide the virus to every corner of devourer space. There has to be something we can do, Yuna said, checking her medical equipment against human physiology. Some way to reduce the strain? Dongmin said suddenly, his eyes opening for the first time in hours. The virus is almost finished. It's learned enough to sustain itself. What does that mean? Taeho asked. Sujin struggled to sit up. It means the virus no longer needs us to guide it. It's become self-sustaining. It will continue to spread and evolve on its own. Then you can rest, Bora said hopefully. Kyung-ho shook his head. Damage is already done. We pushed our brains past their limits. The connections we formed with the virus network can't be severed safely. Are you saying you're going to die? Yuna asked bluntly. We're saying we're probably going to die, Dongmin corrected. But there's a difference. Even facing death, the humans maintained their strange optimism. It was something Taeho was beginning to understand. They didn't survive by being stronger or smarter than their problems. They survived by being more stubborn, sir, Bora called from the communications console. We're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Everyone wants to thank the humans for what they've done. What are they saying? Sujin asked. Bora read from the display. The Threks Confederation offers the humans honorary citizenship and a fleet of ships. The Kalani want to build a monument to human sacrifice. The Reformed Coalition is offering medical assistance. That's nice, Dongmin said weakly. But we're not dead yet. The virus is stabilizing, Kunjo reported, checking his improvised monitoring equipment. It's found its own pattern now. Doesn't need us anymore. As if responding to his words, the medical displays around the human beds began to show improved readings. Brain activity was still dangerously high, but it was no longer climbing toward fatal levels. You might actually survive this, Yuna said, amazement in her voice. Told you, Sujin said with a grin. Humans are hard to kill. Over the following days, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The Devourer civilization had completely collapsed. Their ships drifted powerless in space, their crews either dead or fled. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources were being reclaimed by their original inhabitants. But perhaps the most interesting report came from Wubin's analysis of the virus itself. It's evolved beyond the original code, he told the recovering humans. The virus has become something new, It's not just destroying devourer systems anymore. It's learning to repair the damage they caused. What do you mean? Dongmin asked, sitting up in his medical bed. Mining worlds are being restored. Destroyed ecosystems are regenerating. The virus is using devourer technology to fix what the devourers broke. Sujin laughed, though the sound was still weak. That's not what we programmed it to do. No, Wubin agreed. But it learned from you. It learned to be stubborn and creative and to never give up. Now it's applying those traits to heal the galaxy. Kyung-ho nodded slowly. The virus absorbed our thought patterns. It doesn't just think like a human now. It acts like one. Is that good or bad? Bora asked. Yes, all three humans said at the same time, then laughed at their shared response. Taeho looked out the window at the stars, thinking about what had happened. The galaxy was free from the devourers, but it had been freed by creatures who were arguably more dangerous than the machines they had defeated. What will you do now? He asked. The humans, Dongdash Min, struggled to his feet, still weak, but determined to move. What we always do? Find somewhere new to explore. The galaxy owes you everything, Taeho said. You could have anything you want. We want our ship fixed and supplies for the journey, Sujin said simply. There are other galaxies out there. Other impossible problems to solve? You're leaving? Bora asked, and Taeho heard something like sadness in her voice. That's what humans do, Kung-ho explained. We move on. We don't build empires or rule worlds. Just survive and explore and cause trouble wherever we go. As the humans prepared to leave, Taeho found himself both relieved and terrified. The galaxy was safe from the devourers, but it had learned that there were creatures in the universe who survived by being stranger and more persistent than anything else that existed. The humans had saved them all, but Taeho suspected they had also doomed them to live in a universe where anything was possible, no matter how impossible it seemed. 3 weeks after the fall of the Devourer fleet, Grimhold Station had become the busiest place in the galaxy. Ships arrived daily from every corner of known space, bringing representatives from species that had hidden in the shadows for centuries. They all came with the same purpose, to see the humans who had accomplished the impossible. Taeho stood in the docking bay, watching yet another delegation arrive. The Threx had sent their entire High Council. The Kalani had dispatched a fleet of ceremonial vessels. Even species he had never heard of were making the journey to pay their respects. But the humans themselves seemed uncomfortable with all the attention. I don't understand why everyone is making such a big deal about this, Sujin said, tinkering with her ship's engine. The Soul's Pride was being repaired, though repaired was probably the wrong word. It was being rebuilt from the ground up using materials donated by grateful species from across the galaxy. You ended a 1,000-year war, Bora pointed out. You saved every living species in the galaxy. We solved a problem, Dongmin corrected. That's what humans do? Yuna approached with a medical report. Captain, I've been studying the virus. Code that you uploaded to the Devourer networks. It's still evolving. Is that bad? Kyung-ho asked. I don't know. It's doing things we never programmed it to do. Look at this. Yuna activated a holographic display showing star charts from across the galaxy. The virus has spread to every system that the Devourers ever touched. But instead of just destroying their technology, it's using that technology to repair environmental damage. The display showed worlds that had been strip-mined by the Devourers slowly regenerating. Forests were growing back, cleaned. Entire ecosystems were being restored using advanced terraforming technology that the machines had left behind. It's like the virus learned to feel guilty, Wubin observed. It's trying to undo the damage that its hosts caused. Dongmin studied the display with interest. That's not guilt. That's efficiency. The virus learned that a healthy galaxy is easier to survive in than a broken one. But you didn't program it to think that way, Taeho said. No, Sujin agreed. But it learned from us. Humans always try to fix things, even when they're not supposed to. Over the weeks that followed, more strange reports arrived. The virus wasn't just repairing environmental damage. It was improving on the original designs. Worlds that had been pleasant before the Devourer invasion were becoming paradises. Damaged star systems were being restructured into more stable configurations. It's not just thinking like a human, Kyung-ho realized. It's thinking like an optimistic human. Is there any other kind? Dongmin asked with a grin. But not everyone was happy about these developments. Representatives from several species expressed concerns about a self-evolving computer virus that was reshaping the galaxy according to its own ideas of improvement. What if it decides that organic life is inefficient? Asked the Threx ambassador. During a council meeting, what if it tries to improve us the same way it's improving the planets? Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Sujin said simply. You don't seem concerned about unleashing an uncontrollable force on the galaxy, the ambassador pressed. Uncontrollable forces are the only ones worth unleashing, Dongmin replied. Controllable forces just maintain the status quo. The conversation revealed something that made Taeho deeply uncomfortable. The humans didn't seem to think in terms of consequences the way other species did. They saw problems and solved them, without worrying too much about what new problems their solutions might create. Tell me about Earth, he asked Dongmin privately. After the council meeting, what really happened to your homeworld? Dongmin was quiet for a long moment. The Devourers didn't destroy Earth, he said finally. We did. What do you mean? We were fighting a war when the Devourers arrived. Not against aliens, against ourselves. The planet was already dying from pollution and environmental destruction. The Devourers just finished what we had started. So felt a chill run down his spine. You destroyed your own world. We were very good at solving problems, Sujin said, joining the conversation. Unfortunately, every solution created new problems. Eventually, we ran out of planet to experiment on. That's why we left, Kyung-ho added. Not because we were running from the Devourers, because we were running from ourselves. The revelation changed everything for Taeho. These humans hadn't just survived impossible conditions on their crash world. They had survived the consequences of their own nature. Are you telling me, he said slowly, that the species that just saved the galaxy is the same species that destroyed its own homeworld? Yes, Dongmin said cheerfully. Oh, that's exactly what we're telling you. And you don't see a problem with that? Of course, we see the problem, Sujin said. That's why we keep moving. We solve problems wherever we find them, but we don't stick around to solve the problems that our solutions create. Someone else can handle those, Kyung-ho added. What? We're not good at maintaining things. We're good at breaking them and rebuilding them in new ways. As the humans prepared to depart, Taeho found himself wrestling with conflicting emotions. The galaxy was free from the Devourers, and worlds were being restored to life. But the cost of that freedom was the introduction of a species that solved problems by breaking everything and rebuilding it from scratch. Where will you go? Bora asked as the soul's pride prepared for departure. There are other galaxies, Dongmin said. Other impossible situations that need impossible solutions. Will you ever come back? Probably not, Sujin said. We've already changed this galaxy as much as we should. It's time for someone else to deal with the consequences. The soul's pride launched from Grimhold Station on a trajectory that would take it beyond the galactic rim. As Taeho watched it disappear into hyperspace, he reflected on what had happened. The humans had kept their word. They had saved the galaxy from the Devourers. But they had done it by unleashing forces that no one truly understood. The virus was still evolving, still changing things according to its own interpretation of human values. Sir Bora said, approaching with a report. We're receiving a transmission from the Outer Rim. It's from the virus. The virus is communicating. Yes, sir. It's requesting permission to establish colonies in uninhabited systems. It says it wants to experiment with new forms of life. Taeho closed his eyes and sighed. The humans had left the galaxy, but their influence would be felt for generations to come. They had solved the Devourer problem by creating something that might be even more unpredictable. What should we tell it? Bora asked. Tell it to be careful, Taeho said. What if it creates something that threatens the galaxy? We'll find a way to stop it. Do you think we could? Taeho looked out at the stars, thinking about the humans and their casual approach to impossible problems. No, he said honestly, but maybe that's the point. The galaxy needs forces that can't be controlled. Sir, the humans taught us something important, Bora. They taught us that sometimes the only way to survive is to embrace chaos instead of fighting it. As reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy, Tejo began to understand that the war with the Devourers had ended, but something new had begun. The galaxy had been introduced to a force of creative destruction that would never stop changing things. They had survived the harshest worlds the universe could create. But as Tejo had suspected from the beginning, nothing had prepared them for the species that survived by making worlds harsher. The humans were gone. But their legacy would reshape the galaxy for eons to come. Whether that was salvation or disaster remained to be seen. Perhaps Tejo thought it was both.